Hello, welcome to Shards, episode 7. We're going to call this one The Knock We Keep Ignoring. Sometimes we hear the knock at the door, the sacred invitation to change. We don't answer with open arms, we answer with fear. And we shout, we resist, we cling to what we know, even if it kills us. And it only makes sense when we've been trained to build walls, not bridges. We've inherited a world that teaches us to conquer, not to listen, to react outwardly rather than to transform inwardly. I want to start by telling a story of my younger years. As you know, I was raised Southern Baptist. I left Georgia and then moved eventually to Los Angeles. One night, I think I was out at a club or something, and I struck up a conversation with a lovely lady, and she told me about this organization called GLIDE, Gay and Lesbians Initiating Dialogue for Equality. GLIDE, Glide. And she was a volunteer for this group, and she talked about how they go into schools and churches and to PTAs and even into companies, and they introduce an opportunity, a safe space for dialogue to happen about gay and lesbian issues. And this today seems so foreign, probably, but back in the late 90s, this was groundbreaking. And I remember I signed up for the training. I started volunteering, and I would go into, it would be a group of us usually. There would be 2 or 3 that would actually speak to the group, but then the rest of us would just be sitting amongst the group so that whenever we broke out into smaller groups, we would have a chance to have a dialogue. But sometimes that wasn't even possible because of how offensive or how reactive the audience sometimes was. Especially, usually it was 1 or 2 people, but I remember feeling so discouraged and so unhelpful whenever people would scream and yell and sometimes even run out of the room because they were so threatened by what we were offering to say a safe space to talk about. It only makes sense why we are where we are today. Over the past decade, society has experienced a profound conflict in how identity, power, and justice are understood. We all remember the movements like the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, and it brought out long suppressed conversations about gender-based violence and systematic racism, and it brought it to the forefront. And at the same time, the push to use diverse gender pronouns, he, she, they, it reflects a broader push towards inclusivity and reshaping of our social norms. And it only makes sense that we would react the way we did to this pronoun declaration, to DEI training, a gender to gender conversations that seem to shift the ground under our feet. And it's clear these changes have not really made a positive change. They've only deepened political divides with widening ideological gaps where each side, we often harden, and we harden in our stance rather than seek a common ground. And lest we forget, we are continuing to endure the effects of our global pandemic. We were asked, perhaps forced, to make visible what we had barely touched inside ourselves. We were handed external language, but few of us were shown how to make it to an internal conversation. And so we did what we knew we had to do. We complied. We resisted. We posted or we raged. We updated our emails and we rolled our eyes, and it only makes sense. But there's another way. Beyond the political noise, beyond the performance, there is a quiet invitation to let wisdom behind these movements, dignity, belonging, balance, not just exist out there in the form of policies, but to move in here, into our breath, into our bodies, into our choices. And let he and she and they not be weapons or banners or barriers, but doorways into wholeness. To let the cry for equality not be an argument to win, but a sacred call to remember what was forced out, what we've lost, and to build something truer inside. Real change, as we know, will not come because we're shouting the loudest. Real change will come because our internal ground has shifted so quietly, so surely, that the world cannot help but change with us. As vital as these movements are, and they are vital, many of us, myself included, found ourselves reacting at the surface. We declared our pronouns begrudgingly. Of course, this is who I am. We were perplexed and skeptical of those who wished to be referred to by pronouns we had never considered for them. We learned the right words for our outer world. And in order to protect our own persona, we defended visibility. But deep down, there was another conversation happening, one we rarely named. What does it mean to have both the masculine and the feminine inside of me? What do I do with the parts of me that don't fit cleanly into he or she, even if I claim only one pronoun? Proudly. What if wholeness was never about performing a gender, but embodying a greater balance that we've forgotten to hold? In a way, the world asked us to name ourselves outwardly before we had fully met ourselves inwardly. And now maybe we're ready for that deeper meeting, that deeper meaning, that deeper truth. Back to when I was volunteering for Glide, I remember feeling so heartbroken and devastated, really, when people screamed at us, stormed out, hurled their anger. I thought, we're trying to bring dialogue, compassion, and understanding, and this is what we're met with. But through my time with Glide, I learned something that I have carried with me through the years, and especially now. Those moments of eruption, those moments when someone showed their butt, as my grandma would say, were often the most important moments in the room. Because suddenly everyone sitting there, silent, uncertain, undecided, not tuning in, felt something real stirring inside of them. They felt they had to choose. Do I align with the fear and rage? Or do I allow myself to open towards something softer, something truer? And often, because of the extremity of the outburst, hearts softened, minds opened, a doorway cracked a little wider open. Being taught and slowly learning that the outbursts themselves had sacred value. They made people in the audience feel something real inside themselves. I think it's Oprah who says that, tell me what it makes you feel, not what you think about it or not what you understand. So the body, the feeling, really causes us to react. And they had to decide, do I join the fear or do I move towards compassion? The unexpected disruption, the internal anger, it actually revealed where the real work needed to happen. And oftentimes, when we had those most extreme outbursts, sometimes from teachers, sometimes from administrators, people who were in charge, usually they were people with the loudest voices. So the students would witness this, employees would witness this, the parents would witness this, and something happened. And oftentimes, when it was so extreme, people would come up to us afterwards and truly have heartfelt emotional experiences, telling us how they appreciated what we had brought to them, and even saying things that they had never spoken before about a family member or about someone they loved or about someone that they rejected in their past and how they're going to reach back out to them. So real change is possible right now in our nation, in our country, and in our world. And in a way, this is exactly what we're experiencing now in our country, in ourselves, in our families, in our political parties, our planet. Outbursts, division, anger, shame. It's heartbreaking. And maybe, just maybe, it's also our salvation. It's also a revelation, a chance for all of us to choose, really. Will we let fear and ego control our future? Or will we allow the discomfort to lead us back to that sacred work that's been waiting all along? It only makes sense that we would react externally to the movements like DEI, gender equality, pronouns, visibility. It only makes sense because the world we inherited trained us to focus outward, on appearances, on dominance, on controlling our external narrative. But long before our current movement, long before this current moment, there were whispers of another way. The knock is happening again. Can you hear it? Another chance, another invitation to stop performing outward change, to start living inward transformation. Sometimes the people who oppose us the most reveal the inner truth we're carrying. The resistance is part of the sacred pattern of the universe. This call to integrate the masculine and the feminine in our external world, to let the sacred union live within us in our internal world, isn't just a modern idea. Long before our corporations added pronoun lines to our email signatures, long before our politics fractured over gender and power, there were voices in the early Jesus movement, like the Gospel of Thomas, like the Gospel of Mary whispering. And for me, when I was first introduced to those, it was in seminary, I think, or actually as I was applying for seminary, I was researching. And there are Gospels that are so profoundly beautiful and written and inspiring and nurturing that were excluded from the Holy Bible. The kingdom of God is within you, they would say. The way forward is not through force, but through union. The peace you seek outside must first be born inside. These voices were buried, edited out, deemed dangerous. Because inner freedom, true freedom, has always been dangerous to those who seek to control the outer world. If we truly felt that we could meet our higher power within, would we be flocking to mega churches throughout our country, giving them our time, our money, our energy, our thoughts? If we truly knew we could transform our fearfulness into expressions of love internally, would we carry the shame and guilt of falling short with our sinfulness? If we truly believed we carry both the strength and the tenderness, the control and the freedom, the masculine and the feminine within us, would we allow the silencing and ridicule of those who live with both? Before we close, I want to share a few ancient words that were left out of the story many of us were given. And this, for me, probably 3 decades ago now, was really profound, and I hope it can reach you in a way. And if you are new to this, I encourage you to do some research, look into it. The Gospels that were excluded from our Holy Bible, and the pattern of patriarchy and dominance, debate, and ultimately the silencing of these voices and these writings, that for many were just as inspired by God as those that made it into the Holy Bible. Before I start this reading from the Gospel of Thomas, I invite you to take a moment to breathe. And I invite you to listen to this in a way that you would listen to any of our Holy Scriptures. This was actually written and held and considered when people, men, were deciding what was included and what was not. Take a deep breath. You can have your eyes open or closed, whatever feels comfortable, but allow yourself to really hear this inside. This is a reading from the Gospel of Thomas. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female will not be female, then you will enter the kingdom. This is not a riddle, it's a roadmap, a call to integration, not erasure, a call to wholeness, not conformity. Jesus, as remembered in this gospel, was not offering a kingdom of power or division. He was inviting us to embody union. Not just he and she, not just inner and outer, but all places we keep separate, healed, brought together, and made sacred. The door we keep searching for outside is actually the door within. And from the Gospel of Mary, the nature of matter is rooted in conflict, but the nature of spirit is rooted in peace. When Mary shared this teaching with the disciples, they were disturbed, not because it lacked truth, but because it came from her, a woman, one who had dared to touch spirit, to find peace in a world addicted to conflict. And they struggled to listen, just like we still do. But the truth remains. Peace is not passive. Peace is powerful. Peace is the path we keep forgetting and the knock we keep ignoring. May we finally choose to listen. In the next episode, we'll listen for the ancient voices, the ones that dared to tell us the door was already open. I leave you with a few questions to hold gently. Where have I mistaken compliance for transformation? Where have I let fear decide who I align with? And where is the knock sounding in my own soul?